And at the beginning of the day, you'd have to say the odds were not strongly in favour of Bourdais adding to that victory tally. But again, that was then, and this is now, and here he is firmly out in front, and here's his teammate Graham Rahal. He's had a difficult day. There is Paul Newman. Great to see him back with the team this season. He's missed the first few races of this campaign. He was a little bit under the weather for those first 3 races, or effectively for the first race, and they were so close together, he wasn't really up to travelling. But great to see Paul here this weekend cheering on that team.
And they are doing, well, at least half the team's doing pretty well. Obviously, Graham can't be too pleased with having now actually 3 times been off the racetrack.
Once assisted, at least.
I was going to say at least once, with a little bit of help from Dan Clark there, but absolutely on course are they for a win. So you say, I could have sworn at the beginning of this race it was going to be an absolute yonder with Justin just walking at the pace that he had. It was just staggering, but what's even more staggering is how quickly this turned around into Sebastian Bourdais' favor. Just absolutely on cue and just doing a phenomenal job. This whole team, 100 wins, is absolute proof of that they are one of the best, if not the best team. I think it's safe to say the most competitive team in the series at present, with 3 championships on the trot, and Sebastian Bourdais certainly not hurting his chances of taking home a 4th consecutive title.
It is interesting. Ahead of Sebastian Bourdais, that is a battle for 7th and 8th, so he's lapped everybody up to 8th place now, has Sebastian Bourdais. There is Dan Clark, and hands off to Dan. He had that moment with Graham Rahal around the back of the track, but aside from that, he's obviously driven a very good race, and particularly in the latter stages, because he's managed to get himself up into 6th place ahead of both Tristan Gomondi and Simon Pagenaud, and they're all pretty close together on the racetrack, and right ahead of them too is Alex Tagliani. So Tagliani's about 56 seconds behind the race leader. There is Sebastian Bourdais closing in on Simon Pagenaud, and Pagenaud for much of the race has been turning laps almost as quick as the race leader, fellow Frenchman of course. In fact, it was Sebastian Bourdais that was a big help to Simon Pagenaud making the introduction to Derek Walker's team, got him into the Atlantic Championship last year. Simon won that championship with the Walker Racing Team Australia effort, gave himself a $2 million purse, which he was able to take back to Derek Walker to run in the Champ Cars this year.
And he's done very well. I mean, he's certainly had the pace. He's made a few little mistakes in some of the races, and he's had a mechanical failure in Vegas that kept him out of a potential podium position there. Of course, his teammate Will Power winning that race, but no. So Simon's done an absolutely phenomenal job. You know, he's come up here from the Atlantic. He's done the ladder system, like you say, won the championship last year, and in his first year in the Champ Car World Series is certainly turning heads with the kind of pace that he's been able to show. And
coming into this weekend, he had the 2nd best overall qualifying average position from the first 3 races, beaten only by his teammate Will Power. Remarkable speed that Simon has shown, and this weekend I know he'll be disappointed with an 8th place finish, but he's certainly turned some quick laps, and heads up driving there. He knows he's not in contention for the win, so he lets Sebastian go through there, and maybe now when Sebastian Bourdais puts the pressure on those cars ahead of him, maybe Simon Pagenaud can take advantage as well and maybe move up from his current 8th position.
I'm sure he'll be trying to do just that as we watch Catherine Legge, who's circulating in 15th position right now, just one behind her Dalecoin teammate Bruno Junqueira. So relatively steady drive from Catherine so far today.
Yeah, disappointing for that team. They've had a lot of mechanical problems this weekend. On Friday, both the cars had problems. Catherine barely got out at all on Friday morning. There was a short circuit in the steering column on that car, a small fire. They didn't get out at all in the morning. And then in the afternoon, they had, I think it was a gearbox problem in the afternoon qualifying session on Friday. Bruno Junqueira, meanwhile, had a gearbox sensor failure in that qualifying session as well. And I spoke to Bruno about half an hour before the start of the race. He reckoned he had a car that was perhaps capable of being in the top 6 or top 8. But unfortunately hasn't been the case this afternoon, and Bruno languishing, as you say, in 14th place, just one position ahead of Catherine Legge. But considering the lack of track time that those two characters have had this weekend, still not a bad effort by those two in their respective fastest laps. Catherine Legge has turned a 1 minute .790, and Bruno's best a 1 minute .663, so just 1/10 of a second between them in terms of fastest lap in the race today. And here is Sebastian Bourdais trying to make a move on the other Frenchman, Tristan Gomondi, and he does it cleanly.
Yeah, that actually probably helped out Sebastian a little bit. He got a good toe off both those cars, and neither one of them really held him up too much. So that's he's working his way through traffic. He's doing everything he needs to. He's just being typical Sebastian Bourdais, controlling this race from the front, which is obviously where he and pretty much every driver I know likes to be.
Yes, indeed. Again, a quick another note about the Dale Coyne Racing team. They came in here with reasonable expectations. They had done one sort of day of testing at Route 66 Raceway near Chicago, but they had spent time also on a shaker rig program, a development shaker rig, where they can simulate the actions of the car actually on the racetrack. They did that at the Multimatic facility in Toronto, Canada, not far from where you live, James, obviously just down the road for you. And they learned a lot about the setup suspension characteristics of this car, but unfortunately with their lack of track time this weekend, plus the fact they didn't go testing either at Mont-Tremblant in Saint-Jovite or here earlier last month, I think that lack of development time on the racetrack has perhaps hurt them a little bit as well.
There's no substitute for track time. Obviously, being on the shaker rig does help, and you can get some useful data. But ultimately, when you're out on a track testing, especially two tracks that we're racing on later in the year, I think you're going to see maybe something similar when we get to Tremblant later in the season. That these cars struggle a bit, having missed that test. So.
Good to see that all 17 cars still running here in Portland. 11 minutes to go, and Sebastian Bourdais went
in a clear lead here at the Champ Car Grand Prix of Portland.
Less than 10 minutes to go now in the Pacific Northwest. There is Sebastian Bourdais, the McDonald's car, as we're getting very used to seeing over the years out in front. Looking to win 4 straight Champ Car World Series titles, unprecedented in the history of the sport, and really in sports in general. It's never been done either in this series or in NASCAR or in the National Football League, in actual fact. Neither in the last 20 years has it been done in the National Basketball Association, National Hockey League or Major League Baseball. So the remarkable statistics that Sebastian Bourdais has been building up with this Newman Haas, and now Mike Lanigan joining that operation as well. And it's been another exemplary drive this weekend, and here he is closing right up onto the tail of Dan Clark, who is himself closing in on Alex Tagliani, the two black and red cars there. That is a battle for 5th and 6th place. Tagliani in 5th and Dan Clark in 6th. And they're looming in their mirrors, that red and yellow McDonald's car of Sebastian Bourdais.
And because these two are racing for position, despite the fact they're going a lap down, Danny's going to be very hesitant to let Sebastian by, simply because it's going to cost him time to get by, and then he's also going to lose a bit of time running behind Sebastian for about that first lap until Sebastian pulls a gap. Now, obviously, Tagliani's going to have to do the same thing, but when these guys are running for position that close, in 2nd place, Justin Wilson is some 16 seconds behind Sebastian. Hopefully Sebastian's a little bit more calm and doesn't try and demand these guys get out of his way, because they're having a good proper motor race right now.
Yeah, and good to think again about Dan Clark. He didn't endure himself to the Newman Haas Lanigan Racing team a little while ago in this race when he appeared to run Graham Rahal off the track around the back end of the circuit. So I think they've got to be hoping he doesn't do the same to the race leader Sebastian Bourdais. The gap now between 1st and 2nd place is over 16 seconds. Bourdais has in hand over the CDW car of Justin Wilson, and a gap of about 20 seconds back to Robert Dornbosch. An excellent 3rd place for Minardi Team USA, and over the last 10 laps or so since the last round of pit stops, Dornbosch has been able to pull away from Will Power in the Team Australia Aussie Vineyards car of Derek Walker Racing. And here is another battle here for farther down the order.
A replay of Long Beach here. This is Paul Tracy's practice crash on Saturday morning. This is what broke his a compression fracture in his back that put him out of the seat for both that race and the following race in Houston. Of course, Oriol Servia subbed for him in those events and subsequently landed himself the 2nd seat at Forsyth.
Indeed he did, and he's done an excellent job with this at Oriol Servia. But now Paul Tracy is under intense pressure here from Jan Halen. So again, Jan is outside the top 10 now, Jan Halen. It's an excellent debut for this season as the Belgian driver. And there is one more time there is a PT in 10th place now, and after the spin in the early stages and the crash on Friday that put him into the backup car, PT has not had the weekend he wanted at all on his return to the Champ Car Series after missing those 2 events. And I spoke to him after qualifying yesterday. PT was really down, and he said, it's days like this that make you start thinking about possibly retiring from the sport. And I certainly hope that doesn't happen, because he's a tremendous character, and on his day he's a tremendous driver as well. But now he's coming under pressure from Jan Halen, and Yeah, really has, again, done a very fine job for Eric Bachelar's team. And talking about Matt Halliday, who drove that car, which carried number 42 for his sponsor, 42 below from New Zealand. Matt Halliday did a good job in the first three races, but as I said earlier on, had absolutely no luck at all. But Matt confirmed earlier this week that, confirmed he's hoping at least, to be back for the final 5 races of the season. And Eric Bachelar, the team owner, confirmed to me he would be delighted if he could run a second car for Matt towards the end of the season. But right now, it's Jan Halen's taken over that car, reverted to Conquest traditional number 34. And look at Jan Halen now really putting some pressure on Paul Tracy.
He absolutely is. And Eric's got to just be grinning to know that his driver is able to kind of put pressure on one of the Forsyth Championship racing cars. So considering the limited testing they had, I mean, like you said, Jeremy, Matt did a very good job in the first few races, just really didn't have the luck. And so I'm very happy to see a good result potentially coming from for the Conquest Racing team. Yeah,
doing a very good job for Eric Bachelar is Jan Halen.
Well, that's the question I'm about to ask him. Eric, you've got to be pretty impressed with how well Jan Halen is doing for you.
Yes, I mean, if you consider that Jan has been out of the car for 8 months, he's doing a very good job. He's been very, he's been very consistent. And I mean, right now he's battling with Tracy. This is a tough race, and I was a bit afraid of his condition because, again, he's not been driving for all the time. But we didn't have any yellow, and he's doing some very good lap time. So he's doing a very good job.
Very good. Thanks.
Thanks, Michelle Beizer there with the team owner for the Conquest Racing, Eric Bachelar, fellow Belgian, of course, and yeah, he's just thrilled to be carrying the Belgian colours literally on that car, the red, yellow and black of Belgium. And Jan is just so excited, first of all, to be back at the wheel of this guy. Really missed driving him after the last 8 months. It was difficult for him to be out there watching for the first 3 races of the season. He'd never lost hope of getting back in the car. He's put a deal together, and he's so excited about going to Zolder for his to race in front of his home fans later in the year.
And it's also important that as we're on board with Justin Wilson, that Eric mentioned about his physical condition. He kept training very hard because he was very anxious and hopeful of landing a ride there. So he actually lives and trains with Porsche factory driver Patrick Long, who raced, of course, in Grand Am and off and on in the ALMS. So he's been keeping fit, keeping sharp, and it's definitely paying off here today.
Bill Stevens.
Well, Phil Howard always has a smile, but I got to tell you, Phil, an hour and a half ago you had an 18-second lead, and now we see what's happened. In 25 words or less, how did we get here?
Yeah, I don't think we had as good a second stint as we would have liked. You got to give it to Bourdais. He drove fast. We get held up a few times, and it hasn't helped us, but you know, it's been a good weekend, really. Second place won't be too bad out of it.
Before the race, I spoke to one of the engineers for this team, Art Kilgore. He said this track is notorious for cars having good setups at the beginning of the race, but kind of going awry by the end of the race, and I think Art was being prophetic about the run on the 9 car today.
Thanks, Bill Stevens. The R-Sport team have had both of their drivers, Alex Tagliani and this man, Justin Wilson, they both had a 4th place finish this year. No podiums, we hope, until today. Justin Wilson now with just 2 minutes to go. We're thinking 2 laps left in this race for Sebastian Bourdais, well out in front. About a 15-second gap back to this man, Justin Wilson. He can just keep it together for about another 3.5 miles now. He'll come away with a second place finish. And certainly isn't what he wanted going into the weekend, but James, as you can attest, still a good haul from the weekend.
Absolutely, it's all about points. It's about championship and making sure you're always at the sharp end of the field at each race. And you know, Justin really didn't have the pace at the beginning of the season that people were expecting out of him. His teammate on the R Sports team, Alex Tagliani, often outpaced him for the first 3 races. And, you know, not to say that he shouldn't. Tag is a fantastic driver in his own right, but I think people were really expecting Justin to step up with this new car and hoping that it would bring a little bit more parity amongst the teams. But in true Newman Haas Lanigan form, they've managed to adapt quicker and better to this car than has anyone else, and that's proving today that Sebastian Bourdais out in front. I've just got to be. I wonder how many times Justin Wilson's finished second to Sebastian Bourdais. Not just how many times he's finished second, but how many times he's done it to Sebastian. It's got to be a little bit frustrating for him. And even though second is a good points haul, you always do want to come away with the victory. You see Catherine Legg there. The festival curves with just less than a minute remaining. Sebastian Bourdais will be getting the white flag for the final lap of the race. on this time by, and she seems to have gone out. She's lost power to the motor of that car, and what looks like she'll not be able to finish. That is tragic. So close to the end.